If you were a young girl who really wanted to feel confident in her own body, you decide that you're going to make a big decision and get a pretty major surgery. But this surgery doesn't come without risks. You're aware of that and you continue to proceed anyway. But little do you know, this decision will result in your life changing forever. Hello, my fellow divers. Welcome back to another episode of Crime Dive, where we take a deep dive into crime. I'm your host, Lexi. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you're new, welcome to the water. We're so happy to have you. If you're returning, welcome back to the water. We missed you, and thank you for coming back to take another deep dive into crime with us. Please make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, so that way this video can be seen by many, because I really think this is an important case to cover. I know I did not upload last week, but it was actually my birthday weekend, so I had a lot going on. So I just decided to take the week off because I had a lot of preparation to do. In case you can't tell, my voice is a little bit hoarse. No, I'm not sick. I just had a pretty crazy weekend. So yeah, but I drank a lot of tea yesterday, so that way my voice could feel okay and almost back to normal, so I could record for you guys this week. I was like, I'm not going another week without a video because you guys deserve regular uploads. This is the first time I haven't recorded or uploaded an episode since I began doing podcasts in December. So sorry about that, my bad, but I'm back now. Today we are going to be talking about the tragic case of Emmalyn Nguyen. This case is a little bit different than other cases that I've done. I just want you guys to know that just because it's not what some call the usual true crime doesn't mean it's not true crime. This is a case of medical malpractice, and it's a very tragic case. I decided to do this case because of the passing of Miss Jacky Oh, and if you don't know who that is, she was on the cast of a TV show called Wild 'N Out. I'm sure you've heard of it. And she was dating a comedian who's also on the show named DC Young Fly. And although this case is not about her, her death did inspire this case. I wanted to do a video on her, but there's just not enough information out yet, and I don't want to speculate. Her death was very tragic to me. I feel like the risks of surgery in general do need to be talked about more. I do want to say, because I know a lot of people are going to say something in the comments, just because somebody chose to get surgery doesn't mean that it's their fault that something happened to them. Yes, it comes with risks and you can be aware of those, but at the end of the day, your doctor has a responsibility to keep you safe. And in this case, that was not done. So regardless of whether or not you chose to get a surgery or not, it's not your fault if your doctor is negligent towards you. And I just want to make that known. But with that, let's get right into the case. Now, there's not a lot of information in this case as far as Emmalyn's personal life, but she was 18 at the time this occurred. Her parents' names are Lin Pham and Sunny Nguyen. And she did have siblings, but I'm not sure how many. Emmalyn was described as being bubbly, vibrant, and beautiful. And she absolutely loved her family. She was really big on family and friends. And she was just a social person who attracted a lot of people. She was just magnetic. Although Emmalyn was very radiant, she did sometimes struggle with body image issues. And she just wanted to feel more confident within herself, which is completely valid, especially being a young woman. So she decided that she wanted to undergo breast augmentation surgery. So Emmalyn decided to start saving for this breast surgery in order to have the procedure done. And she saved around $6,000. Once she turned 18 years old and was a legal adult and graduated high school, she decided to get the procedure done. I live in the country, so if you hear a lot of bugs and birds in the background, I just want to apologize. My house is literally in the middle of the woods, so. On August 1st, 2019, Emmalyn's surgery was scheduled to be completed at the Colorado Aesthetics and Plastic Surgery office in Greenwood Village in Colorado. And this was the office of surgeon Dr. Jeffrey Kim, who was a well-known surgeon in the area. He, along with nurse anesthetist Rex Meeker, were set to administer anesthesia to Emmalyn before her surgery was set to begin. And they did so around 2 p.m. But after they administered the anesthesia, they walked away. And they left Emmalyn alone in the room for 15 minutes. All of a sudden, another nurse just happened to walk by and she saw that Emmalyn was in the room by herself. And she was like, that looks weird. So she goes in to check on her and she notices that her lips and face are turning blue. Immediately, she knows that something's wrong. So she alerts Dr. Kim and Rex Meeker to come back in the room to check on Emmalyn. And when they do, they find that she has no pulse and no heart rate. And they realized that she was going into cardiac arrest. Rex Meeker and Dr. Kim started administering CPR to Emmalyn, and eventually they do end up getting her pulse back. But unfortunately, they ended up losing her again. So they had to perform CPR for another few minutes before they finally revived her. So luckily, Emmalyn was alive, but it was not without issue. Even though Emmalyn was alive, she had suffered severe neurological issues because of the amount of time that her brain had gone without oxygen. Now, Emmalyn's mother, Lynn, was actually in the waiting room just waiting for her daughter's surgery to be done when Dr. Kim comes out and tells her that once they administered anesthesia to Emmalyn, her heart rate dropped. So they decided, out of caution, to not move forward with the procedure. And Emmalyn's mother agreed. She said, "I completely understand."
Back out to tell me that I wasn't able to go back there to check up on her, but she's still doing fine. She's young. Maybe that's the reason why she's taking longer to wake up.
But they didn't reveal all the information. Her heart rate didn't just drop. She went into cardiac arrest twice. But they didn't tell her mother this. They just completely kept this information from her. Now, the crazy part about this case is the fact that neither Dr. Kim nor nurse anesthetist Rex Meeker called 911 until 5 hours later. 5 hours after Emmalyn went into cardiac arrest both times.
Not conscious.
Could you imagine your heart stopping and nobody calling for help? That's exactly what happened to Emmalyn. Now you gotta remember, they're not at a hospital, they're at a doctor's office. So they don't have all of the necessary equipment to make sure that Emmalyn is okay after going into cardiac arrest twice. Eventually, when 911 was called, Emmalyn was rushed to Littleton Adventist Hospital, and it was found that she had suffered permanent brain damage. Emmalyn could no longer speak, walk, or feed herself, and she needed constant medical care. It all happened so fast, and it was just so unnecessary, and now this was Emmalyn's reality. Now, by the time she had actually gotten to the hospital, her mother still didn't know that she had gone into cardiac arrest twice. So she was very confused as to why her daughter was experiencing brain damage, because Dr. Kim still had not told her that Emmalyn's heart had stopped. So she was very confused. The only way she found out that Emmalyn did in fact go into cardiac arrest twice was when ER doctors told her that Emmalyn's ribs were cracked and that her injuries were consistent with somebody performing CPR on her, which is insane that this was how she found out, and that she was right at the doctor's office and nobody told her. Clearly, he knew he was doing something wrong in order to keep this information, because why would you keep this from somebody's mother? He obviously knew that it was his fault that this had happened, and he didn't want anybody to know. Emmalyn spent 22 days in the hospital before she was transferred to the Vibra Hospital of Denver, which is a long-term healthcare rehabilitation center, where she remained in a minimally conscious state. And she really didn't make a whole lot of progress. She was able to smile a little bit, but for the most part, there really was not much Emmalyn could do. And this was such a harsh reality for her family to face, to know that their daughter, their sister, their friend was completely different now, and none of it was her fault. Unfortunately, Emmalyn's issues were just too much for her body to overcome. On October 2nd, she contracted a severe case of pneumonia, and she went into cardiac arrest. And on October 4th, 2020, Emmalyn Nguyen passed away at the age of 18, 14 months after the initial incident that occurred before her attempted surgery.
I was like, Mommy's here, I'm here. Everything's gonna be okay. I was like, Emmalyn, it's okay. You are the strongest person we know. It's okay to let go. We love you so much.
And this was so tragic, considering the fact that the negligence is what really caused her death. Now she's the one that has to face the consequences of it, and now her family is left to pick up the pieces in her absence. Now, before Emmalyn had passed away, her family had already filed a lawsuit citing negligence at the hands of Dr. Kim and Rex Meeker. But after she passed away, the lawsuit was changed to a wrongful death suit. Eventually, it was settled out of court, and Dr. Kim ended up paying her family $1 million. But this was not the end of his accountability. Dr. Kim was charged with first-degree assault and criminally negligent homicide after it was revealed that his employees actually tried to call 911 and he wouldn't let them. I can't think of a good reason to not allow somebody to call 911 other than the fact that you clearly have something to hide. Rex Meeker, the nurse anesthetist, was charged with manslaughter. Now, I do want to note, it's actually very rare to see charges in a case like this, which is kind of crazy because I feel like 9 times out of 10 when this happens, usually the doctor's fault. But the fact that Emmalyn was seeing some sort of justice, or the fact that the people who did this and were negligent towards her were even charged, was a big accomplishment. Emmalyn's family was also very grateful that Dr. Kim and Rex Meeker were seeing consequences for what they had done to Emma. In January of 2020, Dr. Kim's medical license was suspended, but it was reinstated just 3 months later. However, he did have some restrictions. First, he was put on a 3-year probationary period. He could only give general anesthesia, and the procedures had to include conscious sedation, and an anesthesiologist had to be present at all times. Now, I don't know why an anesthesiologist wouldn't have to be present anyway, but that was the rule. Rex Meeker voluntarily decided to give up his license to administer anesthesia, which I think was a pretty wise decision. Truth be told, I wouldn't want either of these guys being in charge of my life or my anesthesia, since clearly they're very careless. And I think Rex Meeker's decision to give up his license willingly had a lot to do with the fact that this was not the first time that he'd been involved in a case like this. Back in 2009, he was sued for a very similar incident after he administered CPR to a woman, left her unattended, and by the time he came back in the room, she had lost consciousness and had suffered permanent brain damage. Eventually, the lawsuit was settled out of court, but the fact that this wasn't the first time that he'd been involved in something like this, I don't even know why he was allowed to keep his license in the first place. The trial began on February 7th of this year, 2023, against Dr. Jeffrey Kim. The charges against Rex Meeker were actually dropped after he agreed to testify against Dr. Kim. The 2 nurses who requested to call 911 but were denied also testified against him to speak to his negligence. After 5 hours of deliberation, a jury found Dr. Jeffrey Kim guilty of attempted manslaughter and obstruction of telephone service, because, like I said, he wouldn't allow his employees to call 911 for Emma, which is just insane. Like, why? Why? Like, at that point, he was valuing his practice over her life, which is crazy, especially considering the fact that he was given his license back. It's insane. He was acquitted of criminally negligent homicide, and as of today, he faces up to 3 years in prison. His sentencing is scheduled for September 8th, which is in a few weeks, so I'll see if I can do a quick update so you guys can know what his sentence was. I'll probably post it on my TikTok, which will be linked below. Hopefully he gets the maximum sentence, because I think something like this is just completely unforgivable and so preventable. And the fact that he wouldn't allow anyone to call 911, he lied to Emma's mom, and then he wouldn't call 911 for another 5 hours. He knew exactly what he was doing, and clearly there was no remorse and no regard for Emmalyn's life. My heart truly goes out to her family. The fact that they're left with such a tragic loss and a hole in their family against somebody that they were supposed to trust is just in itself horrible. Emmalyn was a bright and beautiful soul, and I'm very glad that her family got justice for Emmalyn, because she absolutely deserves it. I really wanted to talk about this case because, like I said, it's very different than anything I think I've ever heard of. I think a bigger light needs to be shown on the risks of surgery, and not telling patients to not get surgeries, but we need to hold the doctors accountable for why are they being so negligent? Why are they being so careless? You know, let's not victim blame. Let's not blame the people who are innocently going in to get a procedure because that's just what they want. You should be able to do that and put your life in someone's hands without wondering if you're gonna walk out alive or not. It's not fair. And Emmalyn was so young, and she had her entire life ahead of her, and it was stolen. But with that, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up today's episode. We'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I hope to see you in the water soon.